If you're a crunchy parent or if you're Ginger Duggar Wolo, I have a few questions that I need answered. Because some things are just not adding up in my mind. So I listened to Ginger and Jeremy's most recent podcast where they're getting into like how crunchy Ginger is, and some of these things are a little strange. I took down some notes. I have some like legitimate questions. And before we get into it, no, I am not crunchy. I do understand why home remedies, why some people choose to do them. There are a few of them that I do personally like that I will, do myself. And I understand that like these things are how, we got society up to a certain point, but also I also realize that like there's a reason why we don't do certain things anymore. Like there's a reason why we progressed. So she claims that, she wants to do a deep clean because it's flu season. She wants to make sure the house is all nice and clean, but aren't a lot of like crunchy people really into like exposure to all these nasty things so that their kids can gain immunity? Again, I know not everyone's the same, but like, She then goes on to talk about how, her whole family's healthy and, growing up, no one ever really had any health concerns. Everyone was great. Here's the thing. You cannot tell me that you're going to have 18 children in a family and all of them are going to be of sound health, that nothing is going to go wrong, that like someone's not going to have some shade of an issue. And I do say 18 instead of 19 because we all know that, Josie has, had a myriad of health issues and that all have to do with the fact that like she was born premature. So we're not counting that. I also don't understand this kind of a situation where Ginger is okay with treating pain and other, symptoms of a health issue, but she's not going to treat the health issue itself. She talks about how, she felt that there was something going on that was wrong with her daughter and she needed to take her kid to the ER, which, yes, if you think there is something that is wrong, that is out of your scope, bring your kid to the doctor, bring your kid to the ER. Understand, like, what you know, like, what you get, and then what you don't know, and go seek out help from the experts, which in this case would be doctors. But then she goes to these doctors, she goes to these experts because she realized that what's going on with their daughter may be out of her scope, and the doctor recommends antibiotics, and she's like, nope, I don't want them, no antibiotics. Why would you go to the doctor, to a fucking emergency room, if you're not going to do what they say, if you're not going to take with them into consideration? Now, I get it. You should have ultimate control over what happens with your body, with your child's body. You have the right, to deny things. You should walk into things like with informed consent. You should be able to ask questions. But like, girl, if you think that there's something like really wrong with your kids here, the first thing they're going to say is antibiotics. Let's be real. You knew what you were walking into. She says she doesn't, have time to do a lot of research, but she trusts the research of her crunchy friends, who are not the experts, by the way, because she doesn't trust the doctors who are the experts. But what she will use for her research is ChatGPT. You'll trust ChatGPT, but not doctors. You make a comment about everything in moderation, and you don't like antibiotics because it can throw off your child's, gut bacteria. Do you really think that McDonald's ice cream cone that you think is good in moderation every once in a while, do you really think that all those artificial food flavorings, all those preservatives, all the sugar, do you think that's good for gut bacteria? She talks about how she doesn't think that ear infections can be a big issue. However, pulled up this stuff, ear infections, when left untreated, may lead to hearing loss, eardrum perforation, chronic middle ear issues, brain abscesses, meningitis, and facial paralysis. Again, in this case, antibiotics, they're going to be your friend. This is also the point where I made a comment, take a shot every time she says season, or where she's talking like a season of life, or in this season of, no, actually, don't take a shot, you'll die. She mentions how you don't have to take anti-fever meds, but then she brings up that, like, I think they're called, like, febrile seizures, but, like, seizures that kids tend to get when they run high fevers. Like, they tend to run in our family. Well, I'm not sure if there's, like, a genetic component or anything, so it may have just happened. When you say yourself that 5 or 6 of your siblings have suffered from these kinds of seizures that have happened from fevers, yes, there's probably some shade of a genetic component. You need to treat the fever. Fevers aren't that bad. My family just has a tendency to have seizures when we get fevers. She then goes on to talk about sunscreen, which I think is one of the funniest things because I will agree with her on something with this. She makes a comment about how, they go out to get vitamin D and they don't really use sunscreen. They're not a sunscreen family. And their way to get around, because she doesn't want her kids to get sunburned is they don't go outside when it's 100 degrees. Here's the thing. Temperature does not automatically equate to, how strong the UV rays are. You can get sunburn in the snow when it is cold outside. You can get sunburn when it's cloudy. You can get sunburn when it's not totally sunny, but you're out on the water. Because what happens? Snow and water actually end up reflecting back the sunlight and making it more intense. They intensify sun. You can go out with much higher UV ratings when it's not as bright outside, when it's not as warm outside, or you can go out when it's 100 degrees and the UV index really, really isn't that bad. But the thing that I will agree with her on is she makes a comment comment where she says, I don't wear sunscreen all the time. That's probably why I have wrinkles. Finally, someone who doesn't wear sunscreen says it. You look like that because you don't wear sunscreen. Everyone says, oh, it's not this, or oh, it could be this. They brush it off. No, she at least admits to it. Like, that's why she looks the way she does. And here's the thing, I don't think she's ugly. I don't think she's a bad looking lady by any means. But like, someone finally admitted to it. I don't really wear sunscreen all that much. That's probably why I have wrinkles. There the fuck we go. Listen, I'm not here to shame anyone. If anyone takes this as shaming, I don't get it, and I'm trying to understand all this. Could someone please explain this to me?